Believe it or not, my favourite newspaper is the Financial Times. Because the truth is that the elites rely on good, accurate information to make money. The propaganda you find in the Sun and the Express and the Mail, that's for the little people. It's not for them. But I have to say my confidence in the FT, and in particular its political reporting, took a real knock this morning. And that's because Politico have reported that Sebastian Payne, previously the FT's Whitehall correspondent until just 6 months ago, is looking to succeed Nigel Adams as the Conservative MP for Selby and Ainsty. Now, when it was repeatedly put to Payne that he was looking to become a Conservative candidate, he was never sure, he always denied it or was ambivalent, and it was often something he strenuously denied. Here he is speaking to Ian Dale in January.
Is this a stepping stone to a political career?
I thought that question might be coming next at that
so
point.
Predictable,
I know, well, I have a variety of Boris Johnson-esque answers ready for you. But I think what I would say is I've got this really good opportunity onward. That is my singular focus at present. And, who knows what the future will bring.
So that's a yes.
That is, I am fully focused onward and making sure...
The key words there were at present.
I'm really excited to get stuck in onward.
Why be so coy? Because actually, I think it's a noble thing to have political ambition. And what you often find, and you will have had this over the years with various politicians who are seen as sort of on the up. And you say, well, would you like to be Prime Minister one day? And they go all coy and say, well, no, I mean, obviously I'm constant. I don't see myself in that league, et cetera, et cetera. You think, you absolute fucking liar.
I think one person I remember who did that was Jess Phillips and Tom Tugendhat, who have both run for leadership positions. And I remember Mr. Tugendhat, who's now the Security Minister, someone just said to him, do you want to be Prime Minister? And he was like, of course. And you can see the interviewer was almost alarmed at that point because of that. Well, look, the reason that I'm saying what I'm saying, Ian, is because I've just started a new job and talking about what I might do in the future is not helpful towards the new organisation.
I can see that.
What I will say is that, as I said, if you hear what I said about winning the big arguments, about trying to do things that matter for the future of the country.
Did you catch that at the end? Winning the argument, winning the debate. So when he was the leader writer at the Financial Times and later a correspondent there, was Sebastian Payne writing things as he saw them, trying to be at least somewhat impartial, or was he trying to, quote, win the argument then too? Is that how we do reporting in this country now? Not, here's what happened, this person said this person said that, but these are my facts, they suit me and my ambitions, and bugger even attempting a semblance of objectivity. Now, we talk about the revolving door between corporate interests, lobbying, the media and politics in this country all the time on this show, and it's a major problem. But this really is up there at the top for bad examples. You see, Payne wasn't a columnist or a pundit. He wasn't a TV presenter. He was a Whitehall correspondent. Presumably, he wanted to be an MP while he did it. His job was to be a cat among the pigeons. But it's possible that when it came to the Tories, he removed his claws and filed his teeth because he wanted to join them. Barnaby, there won't be much coverage of this story, but it says a lot, and I think actually it says something quite central to our politics in this country and about how rotten it is.
You're absolutely right, Aaron. Journalists imagine themselves speaking truth to power, but they go to the same schools as politicians and bankers. They attend the same dinner parties as politicians and bankers. They then send their kids to the same schools as politicians and bankers and hang out with them at the school gates. Some of them, like Sarah Vine, are even married to politicians, and plenty of others, I'm sure, married to bankers. When Noam Chomsky was being interviewed by Andrew Marr, and Andrew Marr was quizzing him forensically about the idea that there could be propaganda in democratic Western societies, and he said to Noam Chomsky, do you really think I, as a journalist, am self-censoring? And Chomsky said, no, I'm sure you believe every word you're saying. It's just that if you didn't believe it, you wouldn't be sat here. Our media is selected from a narrow class of people with a narrow set of beliefs. You saw it during the Corbyn years when they all considered, though they, I'm sure, vote different ways, are different journalists, but within a certain kind of narrow window. And they all considered that someone like Jeremy Corbyn was just so preposterous, so far outside that window that he wasn't to be taken seriously. And so the way that the world is reported back to us when we turn on our TV screens and open our newspapers reflects not a simply accurate and transparent picture of the world, but the worldview of a certain social class. And that means that for many millions of people, there's a crisis of representation because there are a few political leaders who speak for them. When they voted for left-wing leadership of the Labour Party, that was turfed out, even against their will, with a candidate, Keir Starmer, who claimed he was going to represent them and then didn't. And then journalists don't represent them either. And the worrying thing here is a 15-year project by the British Conservative Party to remake the state and all of its apparatuses, including those apparatuses like the media, which seem independent. So while the Conservative Party is cutting the social wages that many of us rely on by cutting public services from 2010, while they're cutting real wages using inflation as an excuse now, while they're trying, some of them, to get rid of inheritance tax to protect the wealth of the boomers when they die, so that that wealth is handed on to their kids and not redistributed properly, huge asset transfer that's going to take place. While they are, in other words, trying to lock down the wealth of the rich and protect most people from access to that wealth, at the same time, they're installing a chairman at the BBC who will do their bidding for them. They're trying to privatize Channel 4 News to ensure that it can't ask challenging questions. They give interviews to Rupert Murdoch's Talk TV and the right-wing GB News to try to set up alternative right-wing media centres, while changing the terms of Ofcom to limit free speech in our media, and while we have very aggressive libel laws that make it hard to criticise powerful people. Then they set up public inquiries run by people they like, and then when those people ask questions they don't like, as has just happened with the COVID inquiry, they try to refuse to cooperate. So you see here a kind of power grab by the state, trying to ensure that the media doesn't ask difficult questions, that inquiries can't do their work properly, while ensuring that wealth flows to those at the top and not to everyone else. So if in that context, a journalist positioning himself as an independent commentator, in fact, is doing the work of the Conservative Party, I think that's very telling about the kinds of lack of pluralism and democracy that we have in a society that claims to be so democratic that it can lecture others about democracy all around the world, Aaron.
Of course, this all happened in the aftermath of the revelations relating to journalist Nick Cohen and alleged sexual harassment over the best part of 20 years. That story was broken by the New York Times at the start of the week, and so far only 3 outlets in the UK have covered it: The Telegraph, The National, and Us. But remarkably, that story was offered to the FT. The Daily Beast in the US captured the story well. They wrote this: The Financial Times has previously appeared dedicated to holding powerful institutions, including TikTok and the World Health Organization, to account over allegations of sexual misconduct. Fellow members of the British media, however, seem to deserve less of the UK-based paper's scrutiny, according to a damning New York Times report. Financial Times editor Madison Marriage and her team led a months-long investigation into the resignation of Guardian columnist Nick Cohen, I should say Guardian observer Nick Cohen, who, her reporting showed, left the paper after a sexual misconduct investigation. According to the Times, however, the Financial Times spiked the story, that's the NY Times. The Financial Times spiked the story, arguing Cohen did not have a large enough profile to warrant an FT story. The Financial Times likes to pride itself as the voice of common sense, particularly on matters relating to business. Yet they paid people to work on a project for months before the editor, Rula Khalaf, said, actually, you know what? This isn't a big deal. You know what? We've paid you thousands of pounds for months. We don't need to bother. It wasn't a big deal. He's not that famous anyway. Does that sound like business acumen to you? Or somebody who's going to be a serious enough person to run the FT? Because it doesn't to me.
We have even more details on this story. This was an update from Potbitch. A few years ago, pain caused a lot of chatter among lobby journalists when the Financial Times ran a series of big political interviews and commissioned Seb to interview Jacob Rees-Mogg. The photographer who was assigned to grab a couple of pictures was surprised when they turned up to the Rees-Mogg household to find Seb already there wearing a dressing gown. It turned out he'd decided to make a weekend out of the whole thing and enjoy a little sleepover.
I want to quickly read to you, this is from the FT Editorial Code of Practice. Point 5, conflicts of interest. FT journalists may not participate in outside ventures that involve commercial or quasi-commercial relationships with entities and or individuals about which the journalists report or edit as part of their work. So that means really the Conservative Party. I think that has Seb Payne on the hook, but here's the killer. Given the story in regard to Jacob Rees-Mogg, nor must they engage in any such relationship with an organisation that competes directly or indirectly with the FT. The FT must avoid any impression that our coverage can be influenced by favours, including gifts, hospitality, and entertainment. Sebastian Payne, while interviewing Jacob Rees-Mogg, allegedly stayed overnight and had a little dressing gown given to him. I think that counts as a gift, hospitality, favour, or entertainment. So Seb Payne, who was the Whitehall correspondent for the Financial Times, this was the guy that literally came up with the idea of the Red Wall, was taking favours in kind according to Popbitch, from Jacob Rees-Mogg. And that's the one we know about, by the way. I find this utterly extraordinary because, we have lots of joke papers in this country. Let's be honest. The Express, often the Mail, the Sun, of course. The Financial Times is meant to be a serious newspaper, and it's meant to provide its readers with serious information because the investor class needs accuracy. The misinformation and the nonsense, that's for the little people. And yet, the base nature of the tabloids, the complete absence of any commitment to professional integrity and standards, is absolutely demonstrated here by Sebastian Payne while working at Financial Times. I think it says so much about our media. People love to bash, including me, The Sun, GB News, Talk TV, The Express, The Mail. This is the most serious publication in the country, and their correspondent in Whitehall was no better.